missing someone.
Hey, this is Bond Diesel, and welcome to the EchoCast. New and old, if you're new here, this is a podcast mostly focused on the Division in the upcoming Division 2 by Ubisoft. And we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to start off with some updates on the channel. I can announce, I think again, that we have finally been approved on iTunes. So if you're listening to this on SoundCloud or Anchor or Google, and you prefer iTunes, it's available. Just search for the EchoCast, and I have links in various places, including on my Twitter and my pinned post, which is at Bond Diesel, spelled the same way as you see it. I am currently, as of the recording of this, 4 days into my YouTube video per day challenge for August. I typically only make one, maybe 2 videos a week at the most. And so for this month, I wanted to challenge myself to a video every single day. And so far, it's going okay. I have a loose schedule based on all the videos and what I want to do, as well as a few extras in reserve, just in case something goes wrong. And things like Fridays are supposed to be a State of the Game recap, but there was no State of the Game this week, so we'll figure it out as we go. I had the first winner of the Clip of the Month Club on my Twitch. It was Idiot Stick. So you either get a gift card or you get a piece of Bond merchandise. You get to pick. So whatever clip at the end of the month has the most views. So take clips, share them, promote them. Whatever one has the most views will get the prize. So it's a little thing I want to kind of reach back and give back to the community. It's been so giving and so patient and so helpful to me as I've done the various things I do. If you want to see some of that when you're in my stream, type !COTM to chat and it'll pop up a little detail about what it is. In the final bit of content update will be that Words with Bond will be returning. I believe I currently have 10 people who have agreed to do Words with Bond. The rest of this month I'm going to spend, when I have time, typing up questions and sending those out. I'm probably going to hold off a little bit on sending those out. I am probably going to try to set it up so I can release them maybe like every 2 weeks leading up to the release of Division 2. Because it's a mix of community members, streamers, content creators, and a few Ubisoft people who have not already done it. If you haven't seen this series, check. I have a page on Medium, the blog website. Search for Bond Diesel, and you will find 30, 35 of them, maybe around there. I can't remember, but there's a bunch of Ubisoft people like Terry Spear, Amper, Frederick Dylander, all kinds of people. All the CMs are on there. There's community members. There's got Eric's and Professor Broman have participated. I've got a few different names and people on there. So check it out. I can't wait to bring that back to you guys. State of the Game recap. No State of the Game. So I didn't expect one this week. They had one the last 2 weeks and there wasn't really much to talk about. I'm really hoping this coming week we maybe have one. And they talk about the upcoming patch. I suspect that's wrapping up if it's not already been submitted for certification through the consoles. We haven't really gotten any hard and fast information about it, so we'll have to wait and see. For Division news, I feel like we didn't get anything too substantial. There was kind of a sort of maybe a little info drop from the Brazilian Ubisoft channel, from one of the CMs, talking about possibly the White House being a base of operations for Division 2. The video is now gone, so either that means that wasn't totally accurate information, or they just didn't want that information out there yet. I wouldn't believe it until we get some more some actual confirmation from the CMs, from the dev team. that would kind of make sense. I don't think anyone would be amazed if that was the case. But as in many things, I would suggest waiting for actual confirmation before believing that. For the speculation piece, this might be somewhat short, and I think we've talked a little bit before, but Jake Camo 3205 on Discord asked me about different enemies in Division 2 or the same factions. There's been some rumors, some whispers, some leaks, quote unquote, a while ago talking about some factions that we may see. The one that we know about, the True Sons, kind of sort of fit into some of those rumors that had come out a while ago, but those rumors were really general. So I feel like it's fairly easy with this game to just kind of throw out some general rumors, and you can kind of, they're sort of right, but you can make them so general that it's gonna be pretty easy to be like, look, I was right, when maybe you were just being really generic. That said, so we have the True Sons, so we know that they're former like JTF, or at least they're led by a former JTF member. I imagine most of the members are former JTF or former just military in general, especially being in DC. I could see that there were probably like a lot of former military people who said, hey, let's go with that guy. He's one of us. And this situation doesn't seem to be getting better. So I'm kind of curious to the origin story of the True Sons. As for that, past that, we don't know. We have no idea. I think that we'll see the Hunters again in some capacity. You consume a lot of my content, you're probably sick of hearing that sentence from me. I still don't think we're going to get them as like a whole faction. I still think they're going to be kind of this underlying force that we deal with occasionally. When it comes to the other factions, I would like to see, I bet we're going to face some kind of civilian type of faction. So we obviously see that there's friendly civilians who have these little camps and stuff like that. I'm gonna guess that there's gonna be civilians who aren't so friendly to these government troops, these government officers, the shade agents, and I suspect that there may even be maybe a whole faction of these organized civilians who have the same type of checkpoints that we may be using from friendly civilians. Hell, we may even clear out their checkpoints to let more friendly people move in or something. I don't know. I suspect we have some kind of faction like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we have something equivalent. I really don't think, if that was the case, if the civilian faction was there, I would imagine they'd be the equivalent of like the Rioters in Division 1. Kind of like the lowest level, the quote-unquote easiest faction to go against. If not, I actually think that True Sons may be the lowest tier faction. Which, what does that mean for? Because I feel like they would show us the lowest one. They wouldn't show us like the best faction we're gonna fight right off the bat. So I'm kind of curious to what's gonna take over the role of like the Rikers and or especially the LMB. So I suspect that there's gonna be at least like one faction that's gonna be really, really advanced, really maybe kind of mysterious or something interesting about whatever the top tier faction is that we face. And I can barely even speculate, honestly. I just don't know, but I want to know, and I can't wait to find out more about that. So yeah, we'll have to see. I do not think we're gonna get the same factions as we had in Division 1. I don't think that's going to happen. I definitely think there's going to be some Easter eggs. There's going to be some influence. We may get some intel or some lore that involves the Rioters, that involves the Rikers, that involves the Cleaners. I could definitely see us finding some intel that says something about this crazy, group in New York City of former, city workers who have built flamethrowers and are burning up the whole city. Maybe even some reference to how do we keep this from happening here. I definitely see some kind of thing like that happening. So the one faction from Division 1 I could see possibly return, and I still don't really expect it, would be the LMB. One thing I don't think people realize is that the LMB is what a lot of people in real life talk about in paramilitary contractors, PMCs. And what their role in real life is that they're typically former military individuals who have been in the military, left after whatever, their service and things. Basically, they go getting paid a whole lot more money than they were getting paid working for the government, and they essentially can get redeployed. The United States government and other governments hire these contractors to handle jobs that they either don't want to send their own troops on, or it's not worth their time or their money, or they think, whatever the situation may be. They essentially hire these PMCs to take care of whatever mission or task that they don't want to do themselves. So in this case, and even private people can hire these PMCs to do things. In this case, a lot of the Wall Street organizations hired the LMB to protect their servers and their buildings and their property at the beginning of this crisis. They didn't realize how bad it was going to get. And when things got really, really bad, you can hear some of the intel from Colonel Bliss, find out that they basically said, hey, this has gone way beyond what we thought, and we really don't even care about your money anymore, because power is a much more lucrative thing these days than money, and we think we can exploit the situation to become very, very rich once it all gets figured out. And they essentially ended their duties as just protecting Wall Street, and they expanded their operations, you could say. So I think the LMB is a possibility in Division 2 simply because the LMB soldiers in New York wouldn't have been the only ones. The LMB would be a worldwide organization, more than likely, just based in the United States. And I can imagine that there's LMB all over the world and all over the country in the United States that would have been mobilized, and they maybe even have communication between each other, different cities. It's hard to tell, what their communication methods would have been. And how they would be organized. So I still don't think we'll see them, but if there was one faction I think we still may see, it'd be the LMB. There could be a rioters-ish faction, but I would kind of compare that to the civilian faction that I'm talking about. Unfriendly civilian faction would probably be similar. But yeah, that's a great question, Jake. Thank you very much. You've been one of my more active people with asking questions on this, and I appreciate it. Moving on from that, for a few community questions before I wrap up this probably a little bit shorter than normal podcast. Tom Cruise Mom Shoes asked me, what was your favorite patch, build, weapon, and meta in the Division's history, and why? I'll take those one at a time. So patch for me was probably 1.7.1. And that's because I feel like that was before the meta really switched to Striker and stuff like that. We had some gear sets and things, but for the most part for me, if I remember correctly, it's either 1.7.1 or 1.6. But that was when I was probably doing the most PvP I'd ever done. Hexo builds, ninja builds, even tactician builds. Like I had, this will go into the next question as well. These are one and the same. During that time, my favorite build was actually to run, I believe it was like something like a 448 or something like that tac build for PvP, where I had a decent amount of damage, a decent amount of health, and a nice heal off an immunizer box, and I ran a defib. So in an emergency, I could drop a heal. That's when I was playing with like Matt Goes Buck and some of those people, Wook and Deep Snake and some of those guys. And I really, really, really loved running that build because I could do a little bit of damage. I did enough damage to be dangerous. I had a nice immunizer that protected from a lot of the effects, the shock turret and stuff like that, which was still so popular and still is today. This was obviously before like Predmark and stuff like that was such a big deal because they didn't exist yet. And then that defib, I loved, if someone needed a heal, I could give it to them. But a few things made me happier than seeing one of my teammates get knocked down and the enemy team, 2 or 3 people shooting at them, turn their attention and then dropping that defib on them and having them pop up and start mauling them again. It's a fun thing for me. I really enjoy running like a healer build, not necessarily because I don't like killing people, but because I enjoy kind of that almost trolling that you get to do on the other team of, you guys thought you killed him? Well, you didn't. He's back and he's murdering you now. When it comes to weapon, so weapon to use, I think is probably the same as most people. The lightweight M4. When it comes to meta, when it comes to actual enjoyment of use or guns, I just think are cool in the division. The Big Al. If any of you guys have heard me or watched my streams or anything, you know that I'm a gigantic fan of the Big Alejandro. Two, double Big Alejandros with destructive on them. 6-piece Lone Star build focused on PvE, running through the underground or whatever missions we're doing. I love that build. It's so brutal. It's so meat. It just kills things so quickly. And when Berserker pops, when it pops off on the Big Alejandro, it's just like the sound is just so awesome. I can't wait for Division 2 because so many of the guns like the Vector have their true fire rate, their true RPM, which for the Vector in Division 2, we at least saw it as 1100. And it just sounds so damn cool. So I would say the Big Alejandro's up there. As for guns I just think are cool, I love the MK16. I really, really wish it was a more useful gun. I really, really like the UMP45. That's another gun I'm bummed. I really hope that when or if we see it in Division 2, it also has its proper fire rate. There's actually a UMP9 and a UMP45. Now I'd like to see them both in Division 2 with maybe some different stats. UMP45 maybe being a little tougher to control but more powerful. UMP9 being more of a laser, and but maybe a little less powerful, a little less damage maybe. But yeah, those guns are up there. I like the ridiculousness of like the Golden Rhino. It's such a stupid gun, but it's so funny. It's just a big hand cannon that's a thing I feel like we missed out on in Division 1. I hope that we have some type of hand cannon possibility in Division 2, properly balanced, of course. Yeah, then meta. So right when the game came out, it was interesting just because people didn't really know how to handle the game very well. So PvP and stuff was interesting, I guess is one way to put it. And then people started figuring out how to cheese it. So right when the game came out, I'll tell you my favorite meta that people hated. I'll give you two of them. One was way back 1.1, 1.2 before they nerfed the explosive bullets. I used to love having a M44 and going into the DZ and either hunting rogues with it and being able to like one-shot them from forever away while they ran, or killing people, going rogue with that and then promptly dying typically. Or the other meta I loved, and I'm gonna get so much hate for this, I loved the Deadeye meta. And to explain it, if you've listened to my last couple podcasts with Bronson, I talked a little bit about it. I love the way that it changed the playstyle. When you heard that SVD, chugga 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 chugga, that distinctive sound, and you knew someone had Deadeye somewhere, everyone took cover, everyone started moving tactically to try to, because if you could flank one of these Deadeye users, you would melt them in a second. They were running full firearms Deadeye builds because they could kill you in 1 or 2 shots. But if you got up on them, you could murder them. Or even if you hit them with a few shots from fairly far away, you would take their health down significantly. This is before the health pool got ramped way up like it is now. And I really think I didn't like the lack of skill that Deadeye gave people. It kind of reminded me of what people didn't like about Predmark and stuff like that, the classified. Because you could shoot someone in the toes, 2 shots to the toes, and they would die, right? But what I liked about Deadeye was how much it changed the way people played and kind of made people play the way that was probably intended. So I'm curious to how, if we get some of that feeling in Division 2. I know there's people here who hate the idea of dying to snipers, but I think it's going to be a little more useful in Division 2, and I think it's going to be another thing that pushes people towards needing to play more tactically. I don't want the Division 2 to be a type of game where you have to stay in cover 24/7. I do want the Division 2 to be something where you just can't face tank. Maybe if you build a certain way into it with a certain specialist or something, I don't know. That's still going to be useful, but it shouldn't be basically the only thing you're doing in PvP. It's just running out in the open, walking side to side, or even chicken dancing and just face tanking people. It's not. I know people have fun with it, but I just don't think it's good for the game in the long run. Aaron the Strong. had a question: dual wielding and TD2 thoughts. I would prefer to stay away from that. I would say the one exception I'd be willing to consider would be if there was a specialist that would dual wield pistols, and that was kind of their specialization. Maybe you would lose your sidearm, maybe, and instead with that specialist, you would have a holster on each hip. It would be it'd be so complicated from like a gear perspective, but you'd have two holsters, and it would be I don't know, like two revolvers or something. It'd be something ridiculous, or just two, Glocks or something. I don't know, but maybe if that was the case, so you would lose. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'd be willing to handle that. I think that could be kind of neat. Maybe they would have like a reload buff, maybe a little bit of a damage buff or something. That is the one way I think I'd be willing to see dual wielding, but I definitely don't want to see like akimbo shotguns or something. I think that pushes the goofiness factor a little too far for me. But that's a great question. I appreciate it. The last question comes from Cunningham, and he's threatened to withhold support depending on how I answer this question. Cunningham asks, when making a PB&J sandwich, do you put the jelly on the peanut butter or on the other piece of bread? And Cunningham, my answer is I put it on the other piece of bread. So I peanut butter on one slice, jelly on the other, and then I bring them together. So I hope after that answer, you're still a fan. I hope I still see you in chat. I hope that we can still be friends. So to wrap things up, I appreciate those questions. Make sure you ask them on Twitter, DMs, on my Discord, in the Beers and Bullets Discord, that the Sit Rep and Bombshell Jackets and Divisionary and the Locked On podcast are all on as well. Feel free to ask questions anywhere. YouTube videos, SoundCloud, literally anywhere. I'm fine. I should have a guest back on in the next couple weeks, hopefully for probably another part 1 and 2. I'm planning on doing a kind of like a lore stream or a lore podcast. I may even do multiple people. I've been kind of reaching out and seeing who's interested. So be on the lookout for that. On iTunes, if you listen to this on iTunes, please rate and review the podcast. I would really appreciate that. Obviously, I would love positive feedback, but if you have some negative, or constructive, maybe the better word, feel free to drop it. But I would really appreciate that. Helps me on iTunes, gets me a little more exposure. Make sure to check me out on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch as Bond Diesel. Check me out on Instagram as BondDiesel_Twitch. You can check out the home of the EchoCast and my Division 2 news resource. It's another Twitter account, the Division Game Hub. The Division Game 2 Hub, and I do have a Patreon. I have one lovely patron at the moment, and he is super awesome, Mr. Doug. Thank you very much. Other than that, that's all I have for you today. This was Bond Diesel. This was the EchoCast episode 19. I will see you guys next time.